Who are you blaming when big scandals in gaming happen? The game studio or the publisher? Are we blaming Arrowhead or Sony for the recent Helldiver 2 drama? Does it go case by case? Flame078 here, the normal gamer, breaking down the average perspective. And I'm gonna be blunt here. Making this a black or white thing is the incorrect way to ever go about this. For the recent Helldiver PSN drama, I said in my last video, Arrowhead was making bad moves. And the situation is really bad. And in the comments section, a lot of you are trying to shift the blame to Sony. And that's just irresponsible. Both Arrowhead and Sony are at fault. Sure, not at the same level, but both should be burned to some degree for the mess they have created. However, if I were to pick the greater enemy, that would be Sony. It is clear Arrowhead is a sacrificial lamb by Sony. And though I side with Arrowhead, in this essay, I'm just going to explain where both these companies messed up. Waking up Friday morning and seeing the community manager's reply nasty like this is not a great way to make me feel bad for the studio. It's just not justified behavior, as much as it is a real response, something that you would say to your buddy in conversation. Professionally, this cannot happen from studio members to their players, no matter how justified. However, this has been rectified, and I believe a good apology was made. Forgive and forget, and we move on for sure. So in that sense, I believe there should be no hate towards the team running Helldivers 2. However, they are not in the clear. To me, it is wildly naive to think that the leadership had zero idea of where their game was going to be distributed. So comments like, "We had no idea PSN was not available," is extremely problematic to me. I will admit and acknowledge this could be 100% out of their hand, but I have a hard time believing that. I build web applications. I constantly question leadership about stuff like this. You are building a game with a certain hard requirement, yet choose to launch without it. Therefore, it is your responsibility as a developer to either know exactly what to do when you need to flip the switch, aka know who this is going to affect, or you need to restrict the game in where it can be sold. All of which can and should have been handled by Arrowhead. And to think otherwise, that to me is a wildly ignorant way to run a business. But bureaucracy in software development is a hellhole, so I wouldn't be shocked. I am just choosing to stand on the side of this should not have been a blind side to Arrowhead leadership. So while all the recent information does alleviate the pressure of blaming Arrowhead, it does not negate their fault in my personal opinion. Because at the very least, when they made that announcement, it should have been clear, without a doubt, what their plan was for players who cannot make PSN accounts. And as such, because it was not, it means they are scrambling and turning it over to Sony when in reality, they should have been fighting Sony from day one about that. How would you allow yourself to be in a position legally that fucks you over? Because to be clear, this is legally a problem. You cannot sell something and then take it back. Just look at what's going on with Tarkov right now. Future edit here. Look, yes, there are tweets from the devs saying they did not know and whatnot, but this tweet right here from the CEO, this is all I need to stay on course with what I'm saying in this video. The CEO knows they are not blameless, and as such, it needs to be on record that they fucked up. So to conclude this portion, this is where I stand. Arrowhead just seems idiotic for allowing things to be handled this way. I believe they are not intentionally trying to fuck over their players, as seen by all the responses from them. And it seems to be clear that they are fighting to ensure players will not lose access to their game. So I blame them for poor management, but they still have my faith and trust. Looks like Sony's entering their dickhead phase again. They become pro-consumer during the PS2 era, fuck it up during the PS3 era, then redeem themselves in the PS4 era, and now it seems they're fucking it over in the PS5 era. Sony is not loving this modern era of making sure games are available as many places as possible. As I mentioned in my console war video, exclusivity is just stupid at this point, and Sony really doesn't want to let that go. And I'm not here to start this fucking console versus PC bullshit. That is definitely some unnecessary energy to be wasted. Grow up if you still fall in those stupid war conversations. It is clear though that Sony is trying to pad these numbers for investors or someone. I mean, changing their FAQ page literally in a day, such a scumbag behavior right there. On top of that, games that had no such requirements were changed recently. Sucker Punch had to go out and say for Ghost of Tsushima, the single player portion does not need PSN, but for online it does, which I believe that was recently changed, but I'm unsure. Regardless, still scumbag behavior. But with them changing shit on the fly, who knows what else they are going to pull. Regardless, this points to Sony wanting to inflate numbers in some way by having these requirements on PC. And if Sony always had this intention, this just makes the whole situation worse because they knowingly sold a product in places where the requirement cannot be clearly met. And for those dickheads who are like, use VPN, change your country, lie about that. China, for example, is a place you cannot have PSN, and there is a clear example that they will ban your account for such actions. So stop saying that as a solution. So intentionally having your game in Chinese and Russian, for example, it shows you wanted to target players from those regions, yet you know they cannot have a PSN. So either they knew from the start this was going to be an issue on PC, or they didn't know and are scrambling to cover up their fuck up. Regardless, both outcomes spell fucking greed, stupidity, and anti-consumer nonsense. Because that goes to show they were 100% okay with selling a game where they should not have sold it. Take in that money and fuck over that player once they lose access to the game, essentially robbing them. Because what are the chances current players are actually going to be able to get refunds from this? I recorded this earlier Saturday, and some new information that is crucial to know now. Sony is walking back and basically removing Helldivers 2 on Steam in countries where you can't have PSN. Also, there's still some issues even if you can buy Helldivers, because in Ukraine, for example, you need a console to make a PSN account and you can't create it online. The glimmer of hope is it seems that refunds are going to be being issued, so if you're affected, at least you might get your money back. But Sony is really fucking this up. So to conclude this portion, here is where I stand. Sony is a problematic entity. You can love their studios and games they publish, but be real, they are pulling off some big anti-consumer practices that are dangerous if they become a precedent to have in the gaming industry. Whether it was intentional or just fucking neglectful, having a PC game have a PSN requirement and selling that game to a country that does not allow you to create a PSN is foul. It is robbery, and using Arrowhead as a scapegoat for their bullshit is disgusting. Sony has single-handedly fucked Helldivers 2 with their bullshit. All for what? Inflating PSN numbers for stockholders? Fucking clowns. So in summary, Arrowhead is at fault for letting things get this far and not doing more to prevent this situation from happening. There's no way in hell that their leadership did not see this coming. It is incompetence at its finest and borderline neglectful behavior to know you have a requirement to uphold. Choose to not hold that requirement. Allow your game to be sold where that requirement cannot be fulfilled, and then flip the switch and fuck over those players. However, Sony is pulling the strings. They clearly wanted to rake in the money by any means necessary, taking advantage of a technical issue on PC and then strong-arming Arrowhead Studios into enforcing their policy. The bait and switch tactic being pulled here is the main issue. No if, and, or buts. The selling of a product where it technically should not have been sold is a problem. Arrowhead should re-evaluate their relationship with Sony. Sony just solidified being right there with EA as a fucked gaming company. Flame078, the normal gamer. Until next time, adios.